Hi, Monk here. I got a couple tips to show you how to change an oil pan on a 2006 Acura TL. You need to jack the car up, at least the front tires, and then put it up on jack stands. Take the front right wheel off. Then underneath, you'll see the subframe assembly and a couple panels. This one's showing the black one on the upper right. That panel comes off with a couple of these pop catch releases and then two bolts that you got to take off. I think they're 10 millimeter. On that metal bracket that you'll see there, and then you can drop that plastic. There's two plastic panels underneath the car, and you get them off by using these Honda plastic pieces. You get the screwdriver to loosen the front piece by getting under the groove and then pull it out. If you break it, it's alright. You can buy boxes of 3 or 5 of them at AutoZone. And then all the plastic pieces will come loose. You'll see here you kind of have to wiggle a couple of tabs loose on there, and then once you get it off, you can see here it's laying on the ground. That's the front piece that's under the radiator grill. When you get under there, you'll see that metal bracket, and then up in there's that 10 millimeter bolt that you can take out. The panel will come down, and then from there you need to go find the two places that the exhaust pipe it splits and see where that attaches, and you got to put some WD-40, probably a rusted, and take the bolts loose around the flanges that are connected to the engine body. Once you get those loose, you can actually swing the entire exhaust assembly. There is one bracket with a hook pin holding it, and you can swing the whole exhaust assembly to the side. You don't have to break the exhaust pipe into pieces. I use some heavy-duty zip ties or coat hanger piece of wire and move it to the side. You can see right there I was showing where the bracket that holds up, it's a rubber mount that it hooks on, and once you pulled it to the side, you can see the left is where it was attached, and the oil pan's now free from the exhaust pipe, so it will be able to swing down. And one more look here, I'll show you where I tied off these zip ties to move the exhaust pipe out of the way. Take a look. This is the two bolts right here that connect the oil pan to the transmission. You can take those out. And there's 18 total bolts on the oil pan. I believe they're all 10 millimeter, and you can get to most of them with an extension and a ratchet. You can see some of them are up under the subframe in the front right corner there, and you can't quite get to them. That's where the exhaust pipe was connected there. You can take those off. It's going to take a lot of force to get the oil pan loose. I haven't drained the oil yet. This is another look here from a different angle at the two bolts mounted to the oil pan. You have to go in through the wheel well to get 3 of these bolts loose. This is from the back side of the wheel well. This is also showing kind of where they're recessed up inside there. They're all kind of buried around the edges. And this is one more look at up underneath there by the subframe. You can get them loose. Those are removed. And this is where the couple more bolts where the exhaust pipe is. There's a lot of write-ups about 3 bolts that are hard to get to on the right wheel well. I'm using a ratchet here to kind of show you where they're at. I had to use a combination of ratchet and a crescent wrench to get in there. In my case, it was easier to use a really long crescent wrench on the front right one. But you can get to them. They're just a little bit of a bear. I'm pointing to the back one of the 3. And then there's one kind of right underneath the timing belt here. And then there's one forward of that. But you can get them out. And then you're ready to start worried about getting the oil pan loose. I'm showing a couple spots here where all the bolts have been removed. These are some up next to the exhaust pipe. This next clip here shows where the bolts are removed to the transmission. And somewhere in here you'll have to drain the oil. I wouldn't do it until you got all the bolts out and you're ready to start banging on the oil pan to take it out. When I drain the oil, I put a big piece of cardboard down and then put your oil catch pan underneath. It makes cleanup a lot easier. And yeah, after you drain the oil pan, you can take the oil filter out and deal with all that extra oil that pours down. If you have no intention of saving your oil pan, if it's stripped out, that's the reason you're taking it off, There are tabs to pry on. I tried prying for a half an hour, and eventually I took a regular hammer and just banged right on the right side of this pan, and about 10 hard knocks, and it kind of broke it free. And from there, take it down. Of course, you got to make sure your oil's already drained. The manual, as well as a lot of things online, talk about to get the oil pan out once you've broken it loose, that you have to take the subframe assembly off and then jack the engine up by taking the engine mounts out, supporting the engine. I didn't have to do anything to get the oil pan out. It took some wiggling to get it out, but I found a trick that really helped, which was putting the jack underneath the transmission and just raising the engine on the mounts just a half an inch. So just putting a little pressure against the transmission right here, lifted it a half an inch, and that pan just slipped right out and slipped right back in. And it really helps for assembly. Once you get it out, you need to inspect the pan, and then you can see here, I really took the time with brake cleaner, and I used a razor blade, a straight razor by hand. I didn't have any stiff tools that would scratch it, but all of that Honda bond will pry loose or just come right off if you rub it off with a glove. But you can see all that silver part there. I've cleaned all that up and made sure that none of the residual glue from the previous pan is still there. Yep, you'll have to keep wiping down these parts of the inside of the engine there that oil will drip out, but if you've drained it well, not much will come down. And then you'll be ready to put on Honda Bond, which I put right on that silver part there around that instead of putting it on the oil pan. I found that in this case, it makes it much easier to get the pan in and lined up without ruining the Honda Bond seal. It's just a thin coating on there of it all around the silver parts here as you put it back up into the engine. Once you got all the bolts in, go ahead and torque them back down. There's a sequence in the manual, so make sure you follow that so you don't warp the pan. It's around 108 inch-pounds on these 10 millimeter bolts. And once the pan's up there, you can start reassembling things. Put the exhaust pipe back up. There's a couple brackets you got to put on there. One from the pan to the frame. The plastic mud guards go back in there with the bolts and the plastic fasteners. And I let it cure overnight for the Honda Bond. I didn't put oil in it until the next day. It's about 4.6 quarts of oil. And once you're all set, make sure all the parts are put back where they're supposed to be. You can drop it back down. Of course, you got to put the front wheel back on, and you should be set to go. There's a couple extra tips. If you're fortunate enough to have a pneumatic air gun, it really helps to take some of those rusted bolts off with an impact wrench. That makes the job go much faster. Also, different lengths of crescent wrenches help get some of those hard to get out oil pan bolts out. And then a variety of socket extensions, little small ones that get up on those 10 millimeter oil pan bolts will really help out. Best of luck to you. If you have any questions, you can email me and I'll try to get back to you.